Welcome everyone. We're going to be talking about Salesforce Lightning today. Salesforce Lightning is a new UI that's introduced by Salesforce in order to keep up with their competition. We'll quickly take a look at our agenda, and on the first couple of slides, I'll further explain what Salesforce Lightning is actually. So we'll talk about how to switch from Salesforce Classic to Salesforce Lightning. So I'll actually show you guys that in the sandbox itself. We'll quickly talk about what's available in Salesforce Lightning and what is actually missing. We'll take a look at the navigation between Salesforce Lightning and Classic Lightning, how they're different, as well as what a Lightning component is. And lastly, we'll finish off with Lightning reports and dashboard. Again, we'll also compare how that looks like in Classic, so you have an idea of like to kind of compare both of them to see how the navigation is different, how the look and feel are different in Lightning nowadays. So Salesforce Lightning, like I mentioned before, is the new Salesforce UI. So Salesforce was a #1 CRM in the world, but one thing they were definitely lacking was the robust UI. Whereas their competition like Sugar CRM, Microsoft Dynamics, they were really focused on making the UI very now. So Salesforce decided, okay, they need to catch up with them, so they decided to introduce Salesforce Lightning. Instead of picking up everything that was in Classic and putting it on top of Salesforce Lightning, they actually started building Salesforce Lightning from scratch, so from bottoms up. Because of that, there was a lot of features that are not available in Salesforce Lightning at the moment, especially when it came out in 2015. There was a lot of feature missing. A lot of people were kind of upset about that. But Salesforce, did with their releases, they started making sure they're catching up with everything Classic had. But still, there are still a few things missing, so we will talk about that in the next slide. Just a call out here, Classic will phase out eventually, but Salesforce hasn't given an end date just yet. But as of right now, everything is being worked on in Lightning. So any improvements Salesforce releases, it will be on Lightning. So if you're still using Classic and you're thinking, hey, there's something missing in Classic, unfortunately, it's never going to happen. You are going to be eventually forced to go to Salesforce Lightning. So it's a matter of, if you're still on Classic, it's really a matter of when you're going to be switching to Salesforce Lightning. From my personal experience, I think out of all of the different orgs I worked with, I think I only have one of my client who's working in Classic right now. But again, like, it's just a matter of time of when they're going to be switching to Lightning. Me personally, I like working in Classic Setup. I find that with Classic Setup, the navigation is a lot faster. So, and then we'll kind of touch on that a little bit later. We'll take a look at the both navigation, and I'll explain why I find Classic to be a little bit faster just because I'm comfortable. A lot of people that are starting in the Salesforce world, they are starting with Salesforce Lightning, so they would be a lot more comfortable. But a good Salesforce admin or a good Salesforce consultant even must know both Classic and Lightning, how to navigate, what are the limitations. If I need to do a page layout in Classic, I need to know how to navigate that without enabling Lightning onto an instance when they don't want to enable Lightning. So you need to kind of navigate both of them. The navigation is not so different. It's not so 180 that you're going to be so lost, but there are some minor changes that we need to kind of keep in mind. Where to find your objects in Classic is slightly different than where you find your objects in Lightning. So those kind of navigations we do need to keep in mind. Again, we'll quickly touch on that a little bit later in this presentation. So what's available in Lightning and what's not? So JavaScript button is a powerful thing that we do in Classic. Those are actually not available in Lightning. So they actually have to be converted to what we call a quick action. So quick actions are just as powerful, but they're all done through point and click rather than a JavaScript code. So if you are an org which has a lot of JavaScript button, you might want to consider how to convert them into quick actions. At that point, you might need a developer. You might need someone that knows Salesforce best practices to help you do that. Product scheduling is not available in Lightning as of right now, but I'm sure they will be introducing that very soon. Joint report was not available until last release, actually. Or last release, they introduced a beta version of joint reports, so it will definitely be improved upon as in the future releases. But again, that's just something for to call out again, where it was not available. So if you are a company that had a lot of joint reports, you would not been able to switch to Lightning as easily, or you would at least kind of run into that roadblocks, and you got to make a decision of what are you going to do at that point. And that's always the hard part is, as a company, you had to decide, are you going to give up these features that you have available? Another thing that's not mentioned here but is not available in Lightning is the partner related list on accounts and on opportunities. So that's something, again, some companies do leverage, and that's not available in Lightning yet. And as of right now, there is no roadmap when to release it. The competitors related list is also not available in opportunities, and Salesforce is actually phasing that out. They actually thought that's actually a really bad build, so they're going to be getting rid of the competitors related list on opportunity altogether in Lightning. The partner one will eventually come again. There's no set date for that. So again, it's just a little some of the gotchas you got to be keep aware of. Lastly, as most of you know, Salesforce has a great range of apps through the App Exchange store, and the downside to that is they're not Salesforce products, so they weren't ready for Salesforce Lightning when it did come into the picture, and not everyone is ready for Salesforce Lightning again as of right now. A lot of companies try to keep up with it. They needed to learn how Lightning worked. They need to know what needs to be built out for Salesforce Lightning. So one of the example of that is in Classic, we would have what's called a Visual Force page. In Lightning, if you put a Visual Force page in your Classic layout, it does not look good at all. It does look very messy. You got to do a lot more scrolling, either up and down, or left to right. So you have to build what's called a Lightning component. So in that case, you need someone that knows Visual Force page in your company to build that out. So again, a lot of companies, it did take them a lot of time to convert to the Salesforce Lightning. So you want to make sure that the product that you're using has a Lightning version to it. So if not, again, you got to make some tough decisions in order to migrate to Lightning. The one good thing about Lightning is you don't have to migrate everyone over at the same time. You can do some super users. Some companies do, that's what they do. They introduce it to the super users or some specific users and get their feedback and see what they like about it and see things they're not able to do, and then they start introducing it to a bigger team rather than introducing it to everyone else and everybody's kind of going haywire. And as you will see in a few minutes, you can actually easily switch back between Classic and Lightning. So this is what a Lightning setup will look like. I'm going to be showing you guys the actual in-app setup soon. You can see here that the object manager has a separate tab on its own, whereas in Classic, you would have all your standard objects on the left-hand side in setup, and for your custom object, you would have to go into the actual objects and see a list of them, whereas here they put everything together and all your objects will be there. You'll see that if you're in an app, if you're on a record, for an opportunity record or whatever the record you may be in, and you click setup, it actually does open up a separate tab on its own. And the reason they decided to do that was because a lot of times system admins are opening up setup by clicking the right clicking button on a separate tab, so they're kind of able to see the changes right away. So that's something really neat. I really enjoy that. Again, I'll show you guys that soon. And lastly, like I mentioned before, we will be talking about Lightning reports and dashboards. So if you can take a look here on the left hand side, this is a report of accounts by states. And this is what it looks like grouped together. And this is in a Classic version. So I'll show you guys the difference when building this out and kind of what the results will look like at the end. So that being said, us go to a Salesforce instance right now. So this instance, as you can see, we are in Classic right now. So what you would do is you would go to Setup, and you will see something called Lightning Experience Migration Assistant. This will help you to determine if your org is ready. So, it'll give you like a report of what you have in your org and what you need to do in order to push those changes to Lightning. Um, I'm sure most of you have seen a classic org. You have your tabs right across. You have your setup right here. You have your app launcher right here. You can go into a record, and pretty straightforward. Your related list at the bottom, your detail information is at the top. This is what a classic looks like. So let the magic happen. I'm going to click on this button because I have Lightning enabled. And so we're just switching over to Lightning, and you can see it's a quick click. I'm still in the same app, the sales app. I still have tabs across the top for each object, but my app launcher is actually on the left hand side now. So I would click on this and I will see a grid for all my apps, and I can actually quickly reorder them like this if I wanted to. And I also see a couple of the objects right here. Most of you know that if you can add and remove your tabs on Classic by clicking on the plus sign. Whereas here is I can click on this pencil and I can start moving them around just like this to see what order I want my apps to be in. I can also add more items if for whatever reason I'm not able to see something specific that I'm looking for. I can just simply click on this plus sign and just add that item there. And once I do that, these items will be under my more here. Let's look at a record. So same record, Tabinda. As you can see, it's slightly different. You have what's called a highlight panel, which is a highlight of information. These are Lightning tabs. So again, my related list is a tab, so I have that information right here. My details is another tab where I have just my detail of the record itself. So news is something that's introduced in Salesforce. It's news in general, not about something specific. So a lot of companies do find it useless, so they do take it out. On the right hand side, you see that we have our activities tab where you can create a new task, log a call, new event, email, as well as again chatter is another tab right here. Your buttons are all across, and they kind of cleaned it up where if you have 20 buttons, they don't just kind of go across the page. You can actually click on the down button and you can see the rest of the buttons are right here. So I'm going to click back on details, and what I'm going to do is so very similar to you being able to edit your page layout right from the record, you can edit what we call the Lightning record page. So this right here is called a Lightning record page, and as you can see, each component have a box around them, and that's what we call a Lightning component. So this right here is a Lightning component called highlight panel. This is a Lightning component, and these are Lightning components. So if I click on this gear right here and I click on edit page, that opens up my Lightning page creator or editor, and as you can see, I can add, remove any tabs that I want to. So for example, this is a Lightning component right here, so I can remove my data insight just by clicking like that. I'm going to remove my news because I find that very useless. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my details the first tab, and I'm going to make that the defaults tab. So again, it's still very point to click. There isn't a whole lot of different things that we're doing here in terms of what we did in Classic. And what I mean by that is we're not going to all of a sudden have to do so much coding. It's still very point to click, and in fact it's actually so much easier than in Class. There's a lot more powerful stuff that we can do in Lightning itself. If I wanted to, I can add a component right here called recent items. So I'm able to see my recent items just at the top, and then I'm able to navigate to those. So that's, again, this is what a Lightning component is. It's just a small component where you're able to do anything and everything. You can have, these are your standard components, and as you install other app exchanges, you'll have components right here for each of them. So I can save this, and I'm just gonna activate it. So activating it just says that, hey, like, it's kind of like a page layout assignment. I'm gonna assign it as an org default. It's just saying that all users are able to see this new Lightning record page that I created, or in our case I updated. So you can see that here's my new component, so I can navigate to different pages from here. The other thing I do want to touch on is my setup. So if I click on this gear and I click on setup, so it does open up my setup on a separate tab like I had mentioned. And as you can see, my object manager has a separate tab and my home page has a separate tab. So under object manager, I have all the objects. So I have my standard as well as my custom objects all together. So from here, if I want to look for my opportunity object, I can of course scroll down and find it, but I also have a quick way of finding it just by typing in this quick find itself. So again, a new feature that's been added. So let's say in Classic you have 50 custom objects for whatever reason, you got to scroll down to find the right one, whereas here you just simply type it in here, your object will pop up. So if we go to an object in Classic, again, in a standard object, you click on it, and below that opens up another drop down with all your available options like fields, page layouts, all those stuff. Very similar to that, I click on this object and I have my detail of the object, my fields and relationships, page layouts, Lightning record page is what I kind of showed you, my buttons, and all these list of stuff. But the thing is, creating a field is still the same. If you click on new, you will see that it's the same UI that you saw in Classic, so that hasn't changed. That is still the same. So it's just a navigation of how to get here is slightly different, but the actual creating a field is exactly the same. Same thing with page layouts. If I want to update a page layout, I can click on this page layout, and you can see that the updating the page layout is exactly the same. Like, I still a drag and drop. It's still it's still the exact same thing. So that has not changed at all. In terms of the home, that's where you'll have your rest of your stuff. So your workflow rules are still here. Your process builder is still here. Approval process, case assignment rules, all those things are still here. Again, as a system admin, you are going to be spending a lot more time on your setup. One thing I do want to call out is if you make a change on your page layout, for example, it might take a few seconds to actually show up on your actual record page. So in Classic, whereas I can have my Classic record open here, I can have setup open here, I'll do something on setup, I'll go to my record, I'll refresh, and I'll see the change right away. Whereas in Lightning, it does take some time. Another cool feature is that in search, I can actually start searching something that is in setup. So for example, as you can see, like, I can start searching my enterprise page layout on opportunity, and I can just press search, and it's gonna find that layout for me. Oh, well, in this case, for whatever reason, it didn't. But if I can go back here and I just click on it, you can see that something that I recently touched, it's open. So what the cool feature about that is, rather than in Classic where, let's say I had to close this tab, or I had to go back to opportunity, I had to find that page layout again, the system actually remembers the recent stuff I touched, and I'm able to kind of navigate to them much quicker and able to change things around. Let's talk about reports. I'm gonna go to more, or actually my reports is right here. Because reports was only introduced into Lightning, the Lightning report was only introduced a few releases ago, they still have the Classic version available. So if you click on the Classic, the only difference is the report builder, it's a Classic version. So I can create a report of accounts, and you can see it's the exact same Classic builder. One thing I want to point out is you don't have a run option, so you can't run this report unless you actually save it, which in Classic you can actually do that. So in Lightning they did take that away, only when you're clicking on the build a classic report. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to group this field report by type, and I'm going to save this saying, accounts by type, and I'm going to call it classic so we can kind of tell the difference. And now I'll be able to run this report to see what it actually looks like. So it's kind of bad where, I just want to see kind of what the report looks like before I save it. I don't have that option. I have to save it. Now let's quickly actually build a Lightning report. And here, again, very similar. Your kind of like your report types are on the right hand side. Your actual reports are here. I can click on accounts because I'm going to create an account report. And on the left hand side are all my columns, so my fields that I want to show. I can simply take fields out by pressing the X. I can move them around in terms of what the order I want them to be. I can group this report just by typing it in here, saying that, okay, I want it to be grouped by type. And I can click on the filters, and again, I can say show all accounts that were created, from all time. So it shows all my reports. It is a little bit more faster. Here, I can run this report. So actually, sorry, no. Yeah, I can run this report just by clicking on run. So I can see a preview before I save it. And now from here, I can save this report. I'm going to call it accounts by type. I'm going to call it LEX, which is Lightning Experience. And just like your classic, I can add a chart. Very quick. I just click on this button. It opens up that chart. I can decide what kind of chart I want. So let's say I wanted a donut graph instead. I can do that. I can show percentages, and that's literally it. Like, see how quick I'm able to do this? Versus in classic, you got to go back to editing a report. You got to add your chart, and you got to click on another button to open up a dialog box where you can make the changes and then save to see what it looks like. So in Lightning, it's very dynamic. And the last thing I want to show you guys is dashboard. The cool thing about dashboard now is I can click on a new dashboard. Call it accounts dashboard. I'm just going to put up the 2 reports we just created as part of this practice. And each rectangle is for me to add a dashboard component. So I can have all these rectangles could be one component if I wanted to. So I'm not limited to just 20 components anymore. So I'm going to add the report of accounts by type, and I'm going to make it a bar graph. And I'm going to, let's see, what else can I do here? Actually, I'm just going to quickly create it. I can, make this smaller if I wanted to. I can have it take the whole page if I wanted to. I can add another component right below it, which is based on our Lightning version. Again, I can have it here. So as you can see, in Lightning, it's very restricted where I can place them. Whereas in Classic, it's very restricted where I can place them. Whereas in Lightning, I can kind of place them on the grid. However, let's say this was smaller and I did have a component missing. I can place it here and have that spot empty. It has to kind of fill the top spots. But if I kind of have it placed here, it's not going to push up because there's no space to go here. And pretty easy, I can save this and just press done, and there's a dashboard. Let's say I had, again, hundreds of dashboards. I can quickly search for a dashboard that I recently built. There you go, accounts dashboard. I can do the same thing with report. And the cool part is I can actually do that with my list views as well. See, I have a search so I can look for any account, but as long as I have the filters, I have the filters kind of created here, so it's not available in the standard list views, but on the custom list views, I'm able to search that. Okay guys, that's a quick video of the actual Salesforce Lightning, just introduction video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I know there's a lot more stuff you guys can do, so if your organization hasn't switched over to Lightning just yet, it's definitely time to start thinking about it. Alright guys, till next time, take it easy.